Welcome to the Hunter's Campfire. G'day, my name is Mark van den Bogart, hunter, fisherman, writer and storyteller. With me is Ian Hurley, technologist, hunter, hunting mentor and proud father. Together we want to help you get hunting. Our focus is helping you make the most of public land hunting right here in Australia, even if you don't live in a state where it's offered. This podcast series is all about helping you get started, helping you build your knowledge and your confidence so you can get out there and live your own hunting adventures. Now, let's get started. Good evening all, and tonight we have with us Tony Gillahan from TG Outdoors. So, good evening Tony, how are you?
I'm great, thank you very much.
That's great. And what about yourself, Ian? How are you travelling?
Oh, not bad. Looking at another cold, weary night up here. Although not as cold as Tony by the looks of it, with his beanie on. So no, we're all good here, Mark. Looking forward to this conversation.
I'm sweating, but then again, it's October in Brisbane, so that's pretty normal. Yeah. So tonight, Tony, what we'd really like to pick your brain about is firstly your own hunting experiences, and a lot of that can be seen on TG Outdoors, but also, I suppose, more importantly, and we'll get there eventually, is hunting public land in Victoria. Especially for us wayward Queenslanders who, it's a fair old journey to make the commitment to get down there, and giving them some pointers so that they're at least got a chance to see a deer. So we'll get there eventually. So let kick off. So tell us a little about your own hunting experiences and how you got to be Tony from TG Outdoors.
Oh, well, I sort of started shooting pests, like pest controlling and that with the old man at a very early age, just with the air rifle and 22, and then progressed onwards and upwards. I think it was about when I was like 17 or 18, I started to get right into photography, and I was actually going out. I had access to a property and I was going out trying to photograph Samba while my brother and his mates were trying to shoot them, and I was coming back with these photos of the deer. And they're like, what the hell, man? Like, we've been looking for these with the rifle and you're out taking photos of them.
Oh, you're that guy.
So after that, I think I was about 18. I just decided, righto, it's time to go shoot a deer. And yeah, same thing. It was like my first hunt on that same property that I was taking photos of them on. And yeah, just got myself up into a little gully and shot a little stag on my first sort of Samba hunt. So it just kicked on from there, really. I just sort of fell in love with it, and it's, nearly every weekend since I was 18, I've sort of been in the bush.
Wow. So how did that translate into TG Outdoors?
When I was I don't remember when I sort of started YouTube. It was probably maybe when I was like 21 or 22, so maybe 7 years ago or so. I sort of started carrying a camera around because at the time there wasn't a heap of sort of Samba hunting content out there, and I sort of thought that I was in a position where I could get some good Samba content out there, and that was pretty much where it stemmed from. And I sort of really like the challenge of trying to video the shots and, basically just get Samba content that not many people were getting.
And I think some of the earlier stuff, and I might have this wrong, some of the earlier stuff I saw of yours, you're actually hunting with a bow as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that was like a big challenge, because I think back then, I don't know if I even recall back then of anyone sort of filming himself shoot a Samba with the bow, and that just became a challenge of mine. So I was out multiple times a week just chasing Samba around with the bow and me bloody cameras until I got it done.
So what was the bow setup? Because that's certainly setting yourself a high bar.
It was a very cheap entry-level PSC Stinger.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, nothing like not spending a lot of money to do something really difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so, and more recently now, I see you're hunting with a dog. So you've gone, you've got yourself what looks like a wire hair. It's a wire hair pointer, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, Remi. She's a wire hair pointer.
That's it.
Where did she come from?
She came from my good mate John Nichols in Mansfield.
Yeah.
And
So,
we do
I mean,
hunting together. Yeah, we do a lot of hunting together. So Remi's mum Velvet, he's got her, and so yeah, we sort of tee up hunts, and they're the mother and daughter get to hunt together, so they love it.
Yeah, well.
So what's hunting? I mean, you know, so you're using that dog primarily how you? I mean, more okay. So how are you primarily using the dog to hunt? So is it a sight dog? What's it doing for you?
It depends on the hunt I'm doing, because some of the places I go are more sort of long range orientated. So I'm sitting there glassing and the dog isn't doing as much. If I get a deer, then she'll help find it after the shot. But bush stalking and that, she's primarily wind scenting. So pretty much just trying to work the wind, have her out in front of me. Like she normally hunts maybe 20, 30 meters in front of me. And if she picks up the wind scent of a deer, she'll start leading me in. And if it's a good or a decent stag, it's in trouble. Or if I need meat and it's a hind, it's in trouble.
It's a great way to do it. And how old is the dog?
She's just about turned 6.
Oh, okay. How long she's been hunting with you?
Since she was 8 weeks old.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it's been quite a pairing. Yeah. I'm a mad keen indicating dog hunter. I didn't done the same thing. I decided that the next stage in my hunting life was going to be with a dog. I needed to wait until, some of the family pets that we had, passed on, and it was time for me to get another one, and it just worked out. The timing was great, and there's a local breeder up here who very well known actually in the Dratha or the GWP circles, and I think she may have had an issue with one of her dams and needed to offload pups quickly. So I got a very good dog for a fairly cheap price because of a medical condition. But yeah, I put her through the big game indicating dog blueprint.
Yep.
Paul Michaels over in New Zealand put together. It's a game changer. It really is an amazing thing to hunt with an indicator. But I get your point. When you're long range hunting, they're a bit underfoot sometimes, aren't they? They're a little bit agitated and wanting to get out there and do things, but you don't let them because that's their job. But it's such a different experience hunting with a dog.
Oh, 100%. I love it.
Mm.
So how does that work then? I mean, so you've got the dog out front. It's 20 meters and it's wind scenting. So it obviously picks up a scent. It then, does it stop? Does it then move towards? What happens? What do you see?
She will normally start working towards where she's getting the scent from.
Yeah.
But that can vary on a lot of things as well. Like, depends on the wind currents and stuff like that. But yeah, generally she'll start leading me in, and also the bush conditions, because sometimes where the deer are, I don't really want to go into a lot of the time, especially middle of the day where they're bedded. Sometimes it's not real nice in there. So it's probably very difficult for the dog. Sometimes it's conflicting. Sometimes I'm following her, and then other times I'm wanting to go elsewhere or further into a system or whatever I'm doing. So I think she just deals with me.
Yeah. So the dog picks up a scent and starts working. So obviously the way the dog's literally traveling changes. So I'm assuming it becomes more with greater intent.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So and if it's good condition, so you are following it rather than saying, no, I don't want to go in there. I know you found me one, but I want you to find me another one. Find me a better one that's like next to the truck or something.
Yeah.
See if you can find one near a freezer. So dip it over in. So it's wind scenting for you now. It's now got a scent. Does it point? What is it? How do you go from okay, there's something there to okay, I'm on?
When she's close, she'll just stop and will not move any further. Okay. And that's when I know there's something very close, and then I've just got to find it.
Yeah,
that's half the challenge.
You're looking
at embedded.
I'm assuming you've got that problem where invariably you're looking at the dog and going, but that's not what you're hunting. You're hunting this thing that the dog can see or knows, but there must be that period of time where you go, okay, so what are you looking at? What is here? So there must be, because I mean, it's that old saying, that old problem. You go hunting with someone and you see something, you go, there it is, and they kind of go, where? What is? What are you looking at? And I mean, you can do that. You can do it to your mates and have an argument, but I'm sure with a dog, that's even harder to somehow figure out what it's looking at or what does it see. Because I suppose it doesn't necessarily have to see it. It knows, just confirms that if something is very, very close.
100%. Yeah, I've actually got a video on YouTube where I shot, it's like a 28-inch stag, and Remi wind centered me in for a couple 100 meters, and she just stopped on this little lookout, and I knew that it was close and I couldn't see it. And eventually, like I probably spent 10 minutes looking for it in the binos, and it was only about 20 meters away, and it was just tucked down in this little spot, and it eventually stood up, and I got a couple of shots into it. So, but yeah, half the battle is finding them, especially, middle of the day when they're bedded. They're very difficult to see.
I tend to find, I don't know whether Remi's the same, but my dog Missy, so the scent that you were talking about before, when they're going backwards and forwards, is wind rafting. So they're catching a wind on the scent. Usually they then hone into a direct scent. Once they get close enough, they figure out where it's coming from. They get onto a direct scent, which will eventually find ground scent. Once they've got ground scent, they're on the way, and there's not a lot that the animal's going to do to stay away from the dog at that point, unless it's on the run. Missy, though, she won't go on full lock point until she's got smell and visuals. I used to think that she went on point because she was close and she sensed she was close, but I later found out I just couldn't see what she was looking at. And she only goes on full point when she has visuals as well as scent. And I've found that that's very similar to a lot of people's dogs. I don't know if you find it similar or whether you've put that correlation together yet. 6 years, I reckon you probably have. But
Remi doesn't actually, she doesn't generally do a full lock sort of traditional point, but she's still got very easy to read body language, like when she's close to an animal. Yeah,
I'd suggest that every dog's got their full point. That's always different. Some of them I've got another dog. I've got a Mastiff, and is that retarded? He's not a hunting dog. He's a dumb Mastiff. He's a French Mastiff. And I took him out looking for deer one day, and we're out there, and I could see them, and he's like, "What the fuck is going on with my hand?" The body's taken over. He doesn't know what's going on at all. There's this instinct in behind him that just makes this stuff happen. But, when you're getting a purpose-bred dog that's good at it, they have what, I call Missy's full lock. It's not a traditional in the magazine, forward point, whatever. But it's the body language I recognise.
Yeah, definitely.
I took my Labrador when he was much younger, hunting a couple of times in state forests, and, literally untrained but I had him on a lead. We had made a little blaze orange coat for him, but that's what would happen. He'd be just kind of, and then it was just like this sine wave. He'd just get more and more, and then when we got these goats, it was really weird because he was almost calm until the goat went down, and then he just went he didn't go crazy, but it was very hard to describe what happened to him when that goat went down. It was, he just got so, he just wanted to eat it basically.
Pluck all the hair out of it.
I got a photo. It was in a magazine where I've got him in one. I'm kind of got the goat and the rifle, and I'm kneeling down, and I'm kind of smiling, and this arm's on full lock, trying to hold him in this kind of seated position so I could get a photo of him. He just that instinct just kicked in, and we did it a couple of times. Yeah. But it's something I've never really. I once hunted with Tim and I when we first got back into hunting. We went on this a guided hunt. It was a week-long guided hunt for pigs up in North Queensland, and it's a bit of a joke between us because we call it the world's best farm stay. It's because we hunted basically 12-hour day, 7 days straight, and didn't see a single pig. And this guy was hunting with English pointers, and I spent a lot of time with these pointers, and they would just basically, be way off in front. And he said, wait to hear them baying, and then we're on. But they never bayed, so we never got to see them in action. But they they would be 300-400 meters in front of us.
Yeah.
It was really a sound thing, almost like a driven type hunt situation. And in England, I've shot with people who got dogs, but again, they use them for different things like retrieving and so on and so forth. I did have a guy who had a dog that he's used for driving too, and there is a couple of dogs that they breeds that they prefer for deer over there as well. It's a German breed. So there's it's quite interesting for me not being around that kind of hunting, seeing different people hunt with dogs, and of course what they do in Victoria with the hound hunters, that looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've been out a few times, and it's definitely there's a lot more that goes into it than probably most realise.
Oh yeah, it looks like a pretty a pretty big event.
Yeah, definitely.
All those people organised, get them all out and all that stuff, and having it. I think the dogs chasing, driving the deer is probably the smallest part of it. I think it's getting everyone sorted out and getting it happening.
There's a lot of organisation there.
It does. It looks like
seems like an enormous. It's a real lifestyle, isn't it?
And I'm assuming that's why it's a lifestyle, because there's 8-10 guys out there with rifles. You want to make sure you know exactly who's who in the zoo, and you trust everyone. So. Definitely.
Oh, even just, the blokes that have the dogs, they might own 10 to 15 dogs, and looking after them, and they hunt every single weekend. So rain, hail or shine, they're out camping. So it's definitely a credit to them.
Yeah. So, and they've got, every year they have to get their dogs accredited, don't they? Or something like that. Registered or something like that.
I'm not 100% sure on the ins and outs. I've sort of only tagged along a couple of times, but yeah, I mean, I do believe there is quite a bit to sort of get into it properly.
Look, watching your stuff on video, you hunt, well, not a different country, but you certainly hunt different country than most Queenslanders. So, for a start, there's often snow on the ground, so that's we get excited. Look, mate, I don't know if you know, but in Queensland, about 3.5 hours from here in Brisbane, there's a place called Stanthorpe that every 5 or 6 years gets this kind of spattering of sleet and snow-like stuff. And when that happens, there's like a caravan of people who race up that hill just to kind of go, oh, look, snow. And, the whole town's booked out, and and they're literally having punch-ups in motel parking lots to see if they get the last room just to see snow. But where you are, it's serious Alpine country, and that really, to me, is very appealing. But again, it's a really significant different type of hunting. And where does most of that, when you're filming that kind of stuff, where is that mostly happening? Where are you doing a lot of that, that snow country Alpine hunting?
Yeah, it's just sort of up in around that sort of 1,400 meter elevations, because when there's real heavy snow dumps, I try to get off the tops, because, well, typically in my experience, the deer don't like too much snow. If there's enough snow where they can sort of still eat under it, they're not too bad. But when it starts getting too deep and too hard to move around in, they definitely drop elevation. So
okay, and there's there's obviously Samba, but there's also fallow there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few fallow deer snow as well in state forest, public land. There's quite a few spots there where it snows down. Same thing around that 1,400-1,500 meters, and yeah, you can go out and sometimes see fallow deer and brumbies and Samba, sort of, all in the same vicinity, which is pretty bloody cool.
Yeah. So again, that's something. Well, I've seen brumbies, but I've only seen them well, I've seen brumbies in the high country, on holidays, but I've never hunted in an area where they're in the high country. Where I've hunted, where there's been brumbies, is again the complete opposite, which is central New South Wales, in outside of Pilliga there, and they're in shockingly horrible condition. So it's a very different. It looks very different, and I'm sure the experiences are very different. So that state forest, how does that work? How does that work? How does state forest or public land hunting work in Victoria?
So basically, all our state forests, which you can sort of access on, there's an app we use called More to Explore, and that's got all our state forest and legal national park boundaries. And what I typically do is cross-reference that with Google Earth. So if I'm looking for new country, I'll basically screenshot them and overlay them together and work out sort of where's legal, where's not legal. And yeah, on state forests, you can go in there. You don't need to book anything. You just go in there and it's a free for all. You can shoot as many deer as you want and it's happy days. The only thing is,
sorry, mate, you go.
I was going to say the only thing is, and I think New South Wales is a little bit different in terms of they've got to book a block or however they do it on their licensed public land. But yeah, over here we just have to deal with other hunters sometimes. Like sometimes you might be planning to go to a spot and get there, and there could be hound hunters there could be other stalkers or whatever there may be. So sometimes you've got to have a few backup plans, especially long weekends. So there's been multiple times I've gone to camp somewhere and there's been other people hunting there. And even some of the places I backpack into, I've run into blokes backpacking as well. So, and in places you wouldn't expect to see people.
I've always believed that if it looks good to you, it probably looks good to a dozen other people that are also having a look at Google Earth and layering maps and the like. But do you always hunt with Remi?
Generally, yeah.
So then you've got to be selective on locations based on where deer hunting dogs are allowed, different to hounds. I understand. I've had a couple of trips down there, and I take my dog, and so there's areas you can't hunt with a dog. There's areas you can hunt with a deer dog, listed breeds, and then there's hound hunting, and everyone can hunt in hound hunting land. Yep. And anyone can, people without dogs can hunt in deer dog land, but no one else can hunt in the national parks or the areas where there's no dogs allowed. So
yeah,
got to be a bit careful with your zoning, from what I see.
Yeah, and the national park areas are also, you're only allowed to shoot deer, so you're not allowed to shoot foxes, cats, dogs, anything else.
Oh,
it's
really
just deer.
Okay. So state forest is basically, state forest is any feral, but national parks is just deer.
Yep.
Isn't that interesting that they won't let you nail a feral? Like a cat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Literally like the worst feral out there.
Yes, that's right. Look, there's a cat eating, like a parrot. Oh, leave that alone. There's a Samba over there.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you, Eco Warrior.
That is bizarre. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. I didn't realise
because a cat's one of those animals I'll ruin a deer hunt for any day of the week. Man. I won't do it for a pig, and I won't do it for a goat, and I won't do it I might do it for a dog. I'd definitely put a 7mm up a cat's backside if it comes anywhere near me.
This is a common conversation, Tony. But basically, every hunt is a pig hunt unless there's no pigs there, and then I'll shoot a deer. So, or if it starts with deer and pigs turn up, then it becomes everything. Everything for me ultimately ends up as a pig hunt. So,
it's got common as taste.
That's it. That's it. I love them.
All right, so you're
that is really weird. I did not know that. And now to get is it a license down there, or is it just basically you register as a hunter?
You've got to have your game license.
So that's it. But is that a licensing process? It's
just a pay to get license. Yep.
That's it. So basically, it's almost like a registration. You kind of go in and say, "Give me one of those," and away you go.
Yeah. The I think the Hound Hunter ID and the Duck IDs, they're a bit more
Yeah.
involved. There actually is a test that you've got to do. But in terms of just deer hunting and stalking, and even like stalking with a dog, not a hound crew or anything, but just stalking, say, a wire-hair pointer, there is a list of breeds that are acceptable, but there's no tests or anything involved. You're just free to go.
Okay, so if you're a rabbit shooter, you're going to go in the state forests and those kind of places. What's requirements around daylight hours? Does it all end at night? Is there any lights, shooting under lights at all?
Not on state forest, no.
State forest, so
private only.
That's it. Because in with the R license now, there is only for pigs though. There is different times, I believe, and I know they're also. I think they're actually also considering things that like other pest species at night time. But that's in the pipe. That's really quite interesting, that they say you're in a national park, only deer.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially, and like we're also down here, we're having problems with helicopter culling and that of deer at the moment as well. Like some of the spots I backpack into, I got a call from a mate the other week, and he said he backpacked in there, a couple of weeks ago, and found 6 carcasses. So that's not great it's not real motivating for some of my backpacking spots, but it just means I've got to try and find some spots where the choppers haven't been hitting.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? That I just saw recently is it GMA down there, isn't it? Released their annual stats, and deer hunting numbers were down like 60%, something like that. And they made some really oblique reference to, it may have something to do with COVID or something like that. It may have done something to the fact that no one's been allowed out of their house for 9 months. But anyway, we won't jump to too many conclusions. But it's not, even like it was still like something like 60,000 were shot.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably very conservative.
Yeah, well, that's right. There's always one of the issues that when you talk to people, GMA and GLU in New South Wales, is that ultimately it's an honour system. Someone's got to say, I shot a deer, or I shot this, or I shot that, and
That's right.
And it's not like there's a board where your name gets up, so people are not going to brag. So yeah, there must be. It would be not unreasonable to expect that some people don't report what they do. So
their surveys are not the greatest things in the world. I'll just say that. So I don't even know if some of my surveys have gone through, because they are a bit complicated.
All right. So you've talked a lot about backpack hunting, and I don't think we're going to try and arm wrestle spots out of you, so don't be too concerned about that. We've only got like two subscribers, so you won't be given too many secrets away. You're welcome to tell us everything. We'll keep it a secret, I promise. No, but I am interested in, like, because I've taken groups down there, not because I have any experience whatsoever in hunting Samba, but I have enough confidence to have a crack at something different and bring a few people along. And we'll leave home in Toowoomba, and some coming out of Brisbane. We'll leave at lunchtime. We'll roll to a bakery somewhere around 6 a.m. and then into camp by 8 o'clock, and off we go for a week to 10 days, and it's a great experience. The first time we went in, we were in and around the Bright area, and had a great experience. My very first hunt, and my first half an hour after driving all of that distance and having no sleep, I walked straight into a stag, and it was big, and it was dark forest, and it was a dark day, and he was a dark animal, and I had nothing more to do than just stand at him and look like an idiot, because I couldn't raise a rifle. I was dumbfounded that he was so close and he was right there, and it was something I'll never forget. And on that trip, I would have bumped into probably 10 or 12 animals, but they were well and truly in front of me. I got my first experience of being honked by something, up there, and really putting the wind up me, sounding like a freight train. Like, it's just an incredible experience, and something if you haven't been a part of, you really can't describe it at all. But we bumped into a lot of animals. The next trip back, we went to a similar area. The place was dead. There wasn't a wild animal. There wasn't a fox. There wasn't a wombat. There wasn't a, there were no birds. There were nothing. And it was as if the whole valley had been completely wiped out. And we stayed there persevering for quite some time. And then in the last few days, we jumped valley systems and bam, we were onto them again, which was great. So really, we're not really sure what happened in that. That was in the Buckland. Not exactly sure what happened in there, but anecdotally, there's been a lot of contract shooters go in there and various different things. But that level, you were talking about 1,400 metre elevation. I think Brighton and the Buckland Valley are in around 300 metres. So, that's a different type of hunting. Again, I imagine that's right down in those gullies and on the fringe farm country.
Yeah.
If you're backpacking, that says to me that you're really chasing antler. You're chasing those trophy stags. You don't backpack in to carry meat out. That stuff's by the road, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be keen, or you've got to be new if you're putting a backpack on to go chase a Samba and do it any justice. But so I'm quite keen to understand, if we were coming from Queensland and we wanted to, do our Google Maps. We hear names like Bright and Buckland and Carryong, and there's the major river systems that go in there as well. Tips for the humble Queenslander, if we were trying to find a spot to research or look at, can you give us some tips on, you've already said 1,400 metres is, what are we looking at there? Is that because there's high plateaus, or you're really in some mountainous country there? What should we look for as we're planning trips like that?
I would say it probably depends on whether you're chasing sort of any deer or a large deer. I think that really is what it boils down to. So the higher elevations, the more alpine area, that 1,400 metre mark, you've got all that really fresh clover and that coming up after the snow melt, and quite often the stags will go up there to cast and then they'll grow in their velvet. And that's the sort of area I typically am going to look for something big, and that's where I'm backpacking into. But if you're just looking to shoot a deer, the lower fringe country, anywhere on private boundaries, same thing I'm talking about with overlaying Google Earth with the More to Explore apps and your zonings. One of my biggest things was when I was first sort of starting to get into Samba was hunting public land, but right on the private boundaries. So typically, especially around this way, we'll have fire breaks that have been dozed in on the state forest side of the private property, and deer will cross those fire breaks to get to the private for when they're feeding at night. So if you walk those fire breaks at last light or first light, you'll catch deer coming in or out. So there's been times where I've seen 30 Samba on public land literally crossing from private into the public land.
Now, you've got a video about that, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I'm sure I can remember. You wouldn't know what it's called, because that's actually that. I do remember seeing something where you're basically you were looking down this track, and the deer are moving back and forth across the track. You've got video of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
We'll find that video and chuck it up here so that we can link reference to it.
That's the kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that someone's going to go 16 hours and drive down there and kind of go, okay, this is a tip. That doesn't have to be that fire break. It just has to be find a fire break, find that transition country, and then find yourself a lane to look down.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, mate. That's the kind of thing that really helps people out. So yeah, and
especially tracks or fire breaks where it's inaccessible via vehicle. If you can find ones on Google Earth where you can't see car tracks and that going down there, if you just drive around and explore fire breaks, there's a lot of good hunting to be had. And even some of the gullies coming in off those fire breaks will have wallows in that, because quite often water will sit down in those gullies right near the private, and you're perfectly legal to be there.
Yeah, the country we originally hunted on the first trip was just behind a bit of land off the main road.
Yep.
And the farmer there let us have access up his fence line just to get in behind it. And they had a fire break between their property, and I know exactly what you're talking about. We saw a lot of deer, or heard a lot of deer in that area. We probably didn't cotton onto that. We were spending more time just heading up. If we walk further, we're going to find more, right? But apparently, if you stay close, if you put the spotlight out on the paddock at night time, there's 10 or 15 deer there. So, you've just got to sort of wait and be patient. But,
100%.
sometimes we're not. Yeah. And look, honestly, the groups that come down, they want to experience Samba hunting. Just being honked by Samba the first time, like I said, is an interesting experience and a frustrating one for you fellas that are doing it all the time, I imagine. But just seeing them to start with is enough. I don't think too many of the guys coming with us and girls were too fussy on whether it was a stag or a meat deer going away. It was just part of the club experience. So, but then there's some that do want to go and chase a decent stag and get in amongst that. If you're going back season after season, you're talking about up higher. You're talking about snow melting, and the clover growth, things like that. So you're in early spring, September, October sort of timeframes when that snow's melting off, or a bit later.
Yeah, I normally sort of find it starts firing right about now. I typically, my favourite couple of months to hunt Samba is generally October, November. I find that a lot of the sort of lower dwelling deer, there's quite a few ruddy stags. And then in the high country, April, May is generally my favourite months to be up in the high country. I mean, it can always vary, but over the years, those sort of 2 times of the year just seem to be when I see more stag action.
April, May in the high country.
Yep. Just before the snow's really belting.
Yeah, that's cold.
So, watching a lot of Samba, talking to people, why is the walleye so important?
It's like their little communal area. But having said that, I've never had much luck hunting wallows. And even I'm not a huge trail camera expert or anything. I've had quite a few trail cameras out on wallows before, but trying to pattern Sambas very difficult, because especially stags, because they might be visiting the wallow once a day or every second day, and then if the hinds stop cycling, then they might nip off and go somewhere else. Like, they're just very, very, very difficult to pattern. So I used to hunt wallows a lot and just sit over them, and it never really worked out that well for me, to be perfectly honest.
I'm kind of glad that you said that, because there's hunt the dams. I've never actually had much luck hunting a dam, but I've been told by plenty of people that it's this bonanza of hunting. So, and I think that's what it is. Obviously the water is a significant component of what they're doing, but what you're doing in a way is limiting your opportunity. Saying, okay, I've got 10 hours of hunting and I'm going to put all my, put it all in red, that they're going to turn up here when I just happen to be here waiting, and they're going to come in a certain direction with the wind being right and all that. So
saying that though, if you're on one of these trips that we're talking about and you're there for 7 to 10 days, if you're a patient man and a betting man, you'd probably do okay sitting over that wallow, and over that 10 days, you'll probably get a munter that shows up in the end, right? But at least you'd probably see it over that time period. For me, that the wallows are a place to tell me that there is activity in the area, and then you let the dog go and sort it out, because they tend to pick up the fresher sign off the wallow. And something that they're amazing at, they can pick up the scent. If there's 5 deer in there, if they pick up the scent of the one that they think they want to follow, they can crisscross 6 or 7 other animals' scent. It's like a fingerprint. They don't lose that. It's incredible to watch. So that's just a piece of sign. I think you're right, Mark. I don't have the patience to sit on a wallow, but geez, I get excited when I find one.
If I drop, we were supposed to go down this year. Actually, last year was supposed to be my first trip. Then it was this year, and so maybe next year. But yeah, I can't drive 16 hours and hunt 10 days, sit still. You might as well tip me in that wallow and cover me up with mud and leave me there. I'm not going back home, Bob.
The other difficult thing with wallows is, and there's one of the spots I've actually got a trail camera. I need to go get off it now, but within probably that about 500 meters square, I know there's about 4 or 5 wallows. So, and a lot of people probably in that spot, even if they hunt that spot, they may not know that. They might put all their time in one wallow and not realize there's 4 others right nearby.
Yeah.
So you can definitely limit your chances if you're sitting on one, but like you said, Ian, if you sit on that for 10 days, you're probably going to see something and probably going to get something. Whether it's going to be a giant or not, who knows? But
who knows? Yeah. the other thing that absolutely amazed me about these animals, I was coming down off a off a hill mountain on my way back to camp, and you could tell it was it was good bedding country, and I was trying to take it as quietly as I could. I was on my own before I even had the dog. And I came down and I just sort of sat and watched, and these 2 hinds stood up, and they obviously winded me, and off they went. And but the stag held his nerve, like he hung out. He didn't leave, and it wasn't until I took another sort of 10-15 minutes to go and have a look at where those hinds does. What are they, hinds or does?
Hinds.
Shit. Where the hinds were, that stag motored, and the speed in it went downhill into the creek. I tried to follow its tracks, and your heart's pumping, as it does. It took me 15 minutes to cover the same ground. It took about 3 seconds.
Yeah,
they're incredible, and they've got these big coat hangers up here that get caught on everything. That's off to them, man. They're an incredible beast, really are.
Now they're like bulldozers when they take off. Very fast bulldozers.
Yeah.
So, as we said, if you're looking to go down and you wanted to experience deer, staying at the lower levels and doing that, looking for that fringe country, staying at that lower elevation, you'd actually, you'd be relatively successful, and it wouldn't be too arduous and too much of a challenge. If for whatever reason you wanted to go the flip side and you wanted to do the high country style hunting, so what kind of preparation do you put in to go up there?
It honestly depends on how long I'm going for.
Sure.
Like I'm probably very lucky in the fact that some of the spots I go backpacking into are only a 2-hour drive away. So some even less. So I can go up there for just a day trip. I don't have to backpack in. I can literally go in and go for a hunt, and if I'm not feeling it, I can walk back out and do it again the next weekend. So it's one of those things that probably depends on how long you want to go in for.
And so when you do the longer style hunts, are you base camping, or what's your approach, or do you camp and move your gear, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, normally if I'm up there for a few days, like with a couple of mates, we'll normally take backpacking gear and swags, and we'll sort of just play it by ear. Occasionally we might backpack in for a night, and then we've still got another night or two. If we want to walk out, we've got the swag so we can move areas. But we typically will move around a fair bit, because some of the backpacking spots that I have, if I walk in there and I don't see a deer on the walk in, I'll generally won't stay the night. I'll get out of there.
Okay.
It's either firing or it's not.
So you're not really base camping. You're really kind of exploring as you go.
Yeah, pretty much. Even though, I've hunted some of these spots for years and years and years. Kind of like what Ian said. Sometimes you'll go in there and not see a deer, and then if you jump into the next system or a valley over, they might be over there. So it can just vary so much. But I don't like putting a heap of time in if there's no fresh sign, or if I haven't bummed a deer or anything on the walk in. It's normally a good indicator that I could spend a lot of time in there and not see much.
Yeah. Okay. And with that, are you on the move? Are you glassing? Are you thinking, okay, I know where I want to get to glass a system, a gully, a face, or something like that? Or Are you in more heavy cover, and so you kind of you're exploring as you go? So what does that kind of play out for you like?
Or does the dog lead the way?
Or does the dog just do all the thinking?
Depending where it is, yeah, the dog will do most of that for me. But I mean, most of the spots I go to are spots I've been to that often. I sort of know where there's much happening. I know where the wallows are. I know where the rub trees are, the preachers are. So I can sort of go straight to those spots and be like, okay, this is hot or it's not. You know, the deer are using it or they're not using it. And if I've got Remi with me, I'll look at her body language, see if she's picking up any scent. And yeah, sometimes it's just a dud. And yeah, I think Jay and we walked into one of my backpacking spots. It was sort of just as it was starting to snow. I can't remember what month it was. And we walked in there with full intentions to stay the night. And we didn't even put up a deer. We had no interest from Remi. And yeah, I put a trail camera up, and then we walked out, and we ended up camping in the swag at another spot. I think we saw about 8 deer the next morning. So it was well worthwhile us moving.
Okay. And when you're there, are you seeing? I'm quite interested in understanding. You know, the fallow versus Samba. Are they together? Are they really? Is there a clear delineation between the two, or is that kind of all You know, how's that playing out? Are they kind of melding together?
Yeah, I generally don't notice too much issue between the two. Like very often, I've seen them feeding on the same plains or faces.
Oh, okay. So it's rather than kind of it's a Samba area or it's a fallow area, you're actually getting that crossover, huh?
There's probably becoming more of both.
Yeah.
In areas that I used to generally only see fallow, I'm starting to see more Samba. And now in areas I used to only see Samba, I'm starting to see more fallow. So they seem to be very intertwined. They don't seem to phase each other too much.
And have you seen any reds?
No, I haven't personally.
Yeah.
But I do have mates that have shot them in close proximity, like to where I am, which is exciting.
Yeah. Because one of the areas I hunt in central New South Wales, they've been waiting for the fallow to come through, and basically the drought. And this is not the hunting fraternity. This is the farming fraternity. Said that the drought's basically holding them off, and now they've had significant rain. They expect those fallow to move because fallow do seem to move pretty quickly. If the conditions are right, they'll move pretty quickly. So it's interesting to see that kind of that fallow migration within those areas. And I've watched, I think it's called Into the Mountains.
Yep.
A guy who goes by the name of Daz, who I think is
Daz Hawkins.
Yeah, I've chatted him a couple of times. Some of the things, like what was really interesting is a couple on his videos is he's actually encountered pigs, and it's quite a laugh to watch him encounter pigs because it's like pigs, oh my god. So so have you seen any pigs on where you're at?
Not like close by, but I've got a mate that shot one that wasn't that long ago, probably about 15 minutes from where I live.
Okay.
So there is the odd one kicking around. But yeah, for the most part, I've got to travel to find them.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it's worth a trip down, Mark.
Well, no, it's just like that extra added bonus, Here we go. Look at that. Well,
If I saw,
I was hunting the red block a couple of weeks ago, and I shot a wild dog. It's just a bonus. So, which is another thing I noticed. Some of the videos that I've watched about hunting in down in Victoria, there's often wild dogs around too.
Yes.
In fact, there seems to be a lot of wild dogs down there.
Yeah, they're like a throwaway deer hunt for a wild dog because we get $120 bounty for wild dogs down here as well. So that's good motivation to throw away a deer hunt as well. But the farmers very happy if you shoot wild dogs. Even if you're on sort of state forest near a farmer, if you probably, in a lot of cases, if you shot a wild dog near his farm and you went over and told him, you'd probably get access on there. Because, yeah, especially sheep farmers around here have huge problems with wild dogs. They've got to have their electric fences all working properly. And luckily, lately, the dog trapping side of things has been sort of going really well. They've got a really good dog trapping team and that around my area now, and it doesn't seem to be as much of an issue as it used to be. But sort of around here, there was multiple farmers that sold out of sheep just for the wild dog problem.
Amazing.
That is, isn't it? And that's it, because as I said, a couple of videos, they don't often see the dogs, but you can hear them howling or that like that. And it's something that I encounter regularly, but not like frequently. But it's interesting to see it down that country, because that country looks hard to hunt, and I would say it would be a very, very difficult thing to get a shot on a wild dog. It probably would worth throwing away a deer hunt for a wild dog in that situation.
Definitely.
All right. Hey, I've got a couple more questions about their habitat. So if you're searching Google Earth, you're looking at your More to Explore app, you've decided you're going chasing stags.
Yep.
Are you getting into areas where the trees are thinning out up the top? Is that why you're going a bit higher for elevation? Obviously, that's why the clover's coming through, because it's got more sunlight.
Yeah.
You're busting through out of that thick bush that you see down at the farm fringe. So
Yes.
You've got to find places that are accessible like that. Something that might be worth talking about is there's some wild stuff going on up there, eh? You close the roads when the snow comes in.
Yep.
You hear all sorts of stories about people cycling in or hiding caches of gear up there, and like this stuff goes on, right?
It does, yeah. I've cycled in a few times, and we've even walked in behind gates before, and that's actually that tip there for anyone coming down or planning to do a hunt is not a bad one. Basically, some gates will have tracks around them where people have driven around them or whatever. But if you can find a gate where it's obvious no one's driven around it and you want to walk in behind it, then that's a great way to cover a lot of ground, because typically, I mean, as you guys would be aware, you can walk very quickly along a road, and if there's a little bit of snow or whatever on that, you can still travel a lot of country, and then you can drop in on different ridges and that no one's potentially hunted for months and months. So that is, that's something I've done before as well. Just walked in behind the gates. But I have cycled in before on state forest. I cycled in behind the gates with Remi, and she had to run beside me.
Oh, so state forest because you took Remi. I was going to ask why only state forest you've cycled behind. It's the dog that keeps you out of the national parks.
So is it you can have access but just not vehicle access type thing?
Yes, yeah.
It's a safety thing, isn't it? They close it because it's dangerous to drive these tracks. Is that the deal?
And it can make a huge mess of the track as well.
Yeah.
When you've got the snow melt and that and a lot of traffic.
And you've got some bloke who's patrol with 35s, wants to see how hard he can go.
What are you talking about? All right, so that's cool. So that's a picture in my mind. You see a lot of the hunts on YouTube these days. People are getting there, and you're almost able to look from across a gully onto another side, and you've got clear visibility.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a tree. There's stuff there, but I've not encountered anything that looks like that yet. It doesn't sound like I'm high enough coming up out of the Bucklands or out of Brighton, places like that. It's a lot lower and it's a lot thicker. Excuse me, makes it a bit more of a challenge. The old spot and stalk technique, they tend to get the jump on you a bit earlier. But I'm assuming then that the sign that you're looking for, regardless of where you go, is going to be the same. So I'd be interested, you rattled off a couple of terms that some of us might know, some of us won't, but we've talked about wallows. Preaching trees is probably something that a lot of people aren't familiar with. There's a couple of specific trees that these things, like there's a native cherry tree or something like that they can't leave alone. What are some of the things to be looking out for? Unless you don't want to give away all these secrets, Tony.
No, that's fine. They definitely love their cherry trees. Like quite often, especially sort of in the lower country, you'll be walking along and there'll be a cherry tree that's just been absolutely destroyed by stags. They just love rubbing cherry trees and rutting around cherry trees. But preach trees, generally it'll be a tree sort of coming out of an angle on a bank or anything like that, and there'll be like this well-used pad, and that's where the stags sort of come up and they'll stand on their back legs and they'll rub all their glands and everything all over the tree. And
so it's leaning back over them, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's like very obvious. You'll often see mud and that on the tree if the stag's been wallowing, and it's definitely more of a stag thing. Like I don't know if anyone's got trail camera footage of hinds doing it. I haven't seen anything personally, but yeah, there's a lot of great footage of the stags preaching on trail camera and that. So yeah, if you sort of see that, and then there's also like rut pads where stags have a fight, and you can sort of see where they've dug their antlers and that into the ground and been carrying on. So, and generally the rut pads I've found have been close by to preach trees.
Right. Okay. And what about their food of choice? What do they browse on? What are we looking? You've said clover. I've got that one written down about 5 times. But what other things are they chasing? Are they onto bracken fern? New shoots like that, or what are they after?
Yeah, I've seen them eat bracken in the lower country. I've seen them. They love blackberries.
You hear that? Yeah.
Any blackberry-filled gully, fallow deer as well down here. There's quite a few sort of systems I hunt that have got a lot of blackberries in them, and you'll regularly see Samba and fallow in amongst them browsing away.
Bloody blackberry.
Yeah.
That stuff is nasty. I bet your dog doesn't like it. My dog hates it.
No, she's not a huge fan. She probably doesn't mind as much as me. I had to crawl through the blackberries the other day to get that last stag I got, and that was, I don't think the dog really worried about it, but I didn't like crawling through them.
No, I bet you didn't. So they're after that. Blackberries and the clovers. The other thing we saw was some wild pear trees and things like that around that seem to be getting a fair bit of carnage against them.
Yeah, right. I haven't actually noticed that myself, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, that puts a pretty good picture together.
Okay. In the Alpine areas, are they in the heath country, or did they stay away from that, or are they looking more for an open patch or plain?
Honestly, varies deer to deer. I've seen them in all areas, but purely on ease of glassing and hunting, I'm sort of more looking for the faces I can glass. Like regularly, there'll be places that you can sort of walk out and you'll just pick them up with your naked eye on the faces, like especially when that sun hits them and they're bloody bright orange and stand out. Like, yeah, that definitely helps. And it's not that thick lower level country. So, and it's because it's so steep, you can just see more of it. Like you said, there's still trees on there, but the deer, you're sort of more seeing it as an upright deer. You're not looking, directly down on it or anything like that. It hasn't got everything breaking up its outline. So, and same thing in the more semi-open country and that sort of subalpine. When you're walking along, if you see anything horizontal, double check it's not a deer back, because that's a big thing. When you're walking along, everything's vertical. If you see anything horizontal, chuck your binos up, because it could be a deer.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that you're an open country that you can glass. How often are you within shooting range of these things when you find them, or are you really spotting and then having to try and make a plan for later in the day, or waiting for them to bed, or what's your attack method?
Well, nowadays, and a lot of people are doing it, are getting into the long range game. So basically, like I shot a really nice stag early in the year. I think that was at 640, and there was no way to get closer. I would have rather gotten closer, but I had the capabilities and the rifle to make that sort of shot, and that's what I'm sort of. I mean, most people now, even backpackers, like people backpacking in, nearly everyone now has a rifle that they're pretty happy out to a K.
It's a big shot.
Definitely a big shot, and it's not what you want to be taking.
That is a big shot.
That was a big shot.
I don't think anyone wants to shoot that far, but it definitely gives you the edge in that country where it's not that easy. So like some of your valleys, you could be 500 meters to 1,000 meters apart that you're glassing. So it's extremely difficult to try and work your way over there, for an under 500 meter shot. So it's actually in a lot of cases easier to have, to have practiced and just sat down and be comfortable behind your rifle and make that shot. So it's not for everyone, and there's
that's crazy. I literally just reviewed a new scope, and I was really quite happy that I could hit 400 comfortably with it. This is really good. Look at that.
There's a big difference between 200 and 400 meters.
Like bang, that's not bad at all. Straight out of the box, 400. Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so that begs the question then. For those that are taking 6,000, 8,000, 9,000 meter shots, let's talk about your 640 meter shot for a moment. What's the setup? What are you comfortable shooting out to that distance with?
My current go-to rifle's a 300 PRC. It's a Christians in Arms Ridgeline.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Got the Night Force NX8 on it, and it's weighs 4 kilos scoped with bipod, so it's very lightweight, but it's still capable of those sort of distances. And I shoot at those distances a lot. Like on my parents' farm, I've got a permanent shooting range set up, and I can go up there and make sure everything's still bang on. And especially when you're shooting at a small target at that sort of distance, when you've got a Samba in front of you, which is a very large deer, like it's a big target, it's you've definitely got a lot of confidence sort of behind you when you make those sort of shots.
It's like you're sending it's a bloody postcard, isn't it? Here it comes.
But it's not for everyone. Like there's a lot of people that aren't into that, and that's fine. Like
I think there's a lot of people that would like to be into that, Tony, that realize when they go and have a crack at it at a range that it's not a matter of just lifting the scope up a little bit more and having a shot. There's a lot more to shot than just pulling the trigger, and people need to recognize that. And YouTube can show how easy it is.
Yeah.
All right. Like I've got a 7mm rim mag with a 6-soy BDX auto ranging scope on it.
Yep.
And even with a device like that, it puts you within the ballpark. But anything out past sort of 500 odd meters, there's an error, a tolerance that you've got to be comfortable with. But beyond the precision of the web, and the rifles are certainly capable of it. If you've got the right caliber and you've sorted your rounds out and you know what you're doing, that's cool. But then there's the bloody wind.
Yeah.
And there's all of these other elements. The difference even here. So I'm sitting at where am I now? 700 meters above sea level where I am now. Even dropping down to Belmont in Brisbane changes your point of impact by an inch.
Yep.
Just the altitude difference. Now, you're talking 1,800 meters from someone who's coming from Brisbane that thinks he's got it sorted out, shows up at 1,800 meters and thinks he's on zero.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're not allowed to re-zero your gear when you get there. Like, where are you going to go if you don't have a range or something? You're not supposed to do target practice in the parks.
Yep.
So they're just little things to think about. if you think you're going to have a crack at long range shooting at a Samba on the other side of the thing.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
definitely. Victoria, that
yeah. I've got the binoculars that take all that into account, so they make it a lot easier for me because they take your altitude and air pressure into account no matter where I am.
Yep.
And then make their corrections based off that. So it definitely does help. But there's still, regardless, there's still like plenty of places for people to bush stalk and have those sub 100 meter spots, like 100 meter shots. But you're still in the high country in that more open, nicer to hunt area.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, one of the guys that I spoke most about Samba hunting, she's a 35 wheeler.
Yep.
In a lever action, so he's not shooting at 1,000 with that thing. unless he's shooting downhill, dropping on their heads.
You'd have a wry smile on your face if you saw him backpacking off in the distance, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so there must be, it's very, the variances in hunting must be significant.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's quite a few guys that try to keep it, more on the traditional side with the lower power scopes and sort of sub 300 meters, I would say. And then you've got people that are sort of trying to push the limits with capabilities of gear in themselves. It's just all open to interpretation, I guess.
Look, I mean, people frown on it, but I mean, and certainly you can frown on it if it doesn't come together and the person isn't prepared to make the shot and is still operating that way. But there's also the reality is all of that, it's that old all boats rise with the tide, that makes everything better. Like in the UK, for instance, the way where you see this in the UK is with how far they're starting to shoot birds out with shotguns.
Yeah.
They are stretching and stretching and stretching that out further and further and further. High pheasants and stuff like that. They're getting shots that most of us kind of go, what? You get what? Holy moly! So I admire the long range because ultimately it's if you're good at it, it just doesn't something you pick up on a weekend. You're working at it. It's something you're certainly developing over time, and you're learning more and more about your gear.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all types of hunting. I mean, I'm not into the long range because I'm simply not set up for it, and the majority of my hunting is never long range.
Yeah.
Hell, I've taken animals with shotguns. So I'm at that range. I'm at the opposite end of the scale. And I remember I saw one of your videos where bang, and he went, holy moly, that's some distance. But of course, the animal still goes boom, still drops out like it's been hit by a bolt of lightning. So it's still an effective kill shot.
I think a lot of that has to do with generally in the long range sort of scheme of things, the animal's not alert. And another thing I like about that is you can really pick your shot, and you're not just bumping a deer and taking a scrub cutter at it kind of thing. You've got the time.
A scrub cutter. I'm going to get that engraved on my Ruger Scout. Scrub cutter.
Always on the lookout for a podcast title. I think I found it.
That's right. The whippersnipper.
You just haven't heard that one yet.
No, I haven't. But I think I know what a scrub cutter is because I think I am one. I've never heard it described so eloquently, a scrub cutter. See, one of the blocks I hunt up here outside Brisbane it's a small block. And so I actually have to limit my shots because I can't I have to be mindful of where I'm shooting. Like not a couple of weeks, about a month ago I was just watching these reds and they were just on the skyline. I just couldn't take them because where that shot is going, and I was just hoping they'd just kind of come down a little bit and give me a backdrop, but they didn't do it. So away they went. They were at about 200, but they just wouldn't step into a shooting position.
Yeah,
What's the lucky thing about having a bit of access and time, Mark? You can go back.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure, Tony, you've had heaps of those experiences where you it's not quite on. Next time, maybe.
To be honest, I'm there on Friday. So I'm back on Friday. Yeah, I know exactly.
I can do it.
I'm free on Friday.
That's right. The scrub cutter. I love that.
All right. Okay. Well, so we've asked you a whole bunch of questions. We're still with the Queensland punter in mind, coming down your direction. What haven't we asked you? What little tips and tricks might you give someone? I don't know where you live. I'm not going to ask where that is because I know now within 15 minutes of there's good hunting. So you better not give that one away. But if you were to send us into some other poor schmuck's land a long way from you, and that you might know about, that you might send us, what sort of general areas would you send us to if we were coming down, or is that a little bit rude to ask? And if it is, that's cool. Are there any other little tips and tricks and things that we should consider before making the 18-hour drive?
Oh, I mean, I'm in East Gippsland, so there's obviously deer around here. Yeah, write that down.
just get the yellow page, white pages out there.
I'm already tracking his IP address. Don't worry about
it. But you've just got to support the local businesses.
No worries.
That's the repayment. Basically, I mean, nearly anywhere around this area if there's a patch of bush, there's probably going to be a deer in it. And it's pretty much gotten to that point, like, especially in the lower fringe country. Like we talked about going up higher for more of a trophy deer. You go up into the high country, you're going to probably see not that many deer. You could spend a week there and only see a few deer, but the chances of there being a good stag is higher than if you'd focus down in the lower country. But in the lower country, you're going to probably see a lot more numbers. So I would say, like, if I was suggesting to Queensland or anyone else sort of coming down or planning a long journey to come hunt, if they're just wanting to see deer numbers, to focus on the back of private properties and the boundaries, making sure they're on the right side of the fence, obviously. Sure. Or even, a lot of farmers are quite friendly. You just never know if you see them in the farm.
Yeah.
Say good day. There is definitely still private out there to be gained access on, for sure. So
okay. So, and with that, I mean, you come down, as we said, if you want to see deer and you want to increase your chances of seeing deer for first, more as a learning trip, stay in the lower fringe country. Try and get where you can see, as you said, so on those fire trails and things like that.
Yeah.
Be active.
October, November is when you said earlier.
October, November. For stag activity, for down lower, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know, mate. Good to know.
That where there is
just a different mentality to the bush stalker. And look, a lot of the hunting that we do here, the reds and the fallow are, they're grazing. They're bedding up in the bush and they're coming out onto the farmland, and that's what they like to do. I've noticed that Samba do that, but they're also quite happy just to hole up in the bush and browse in there and not come out onto the farming country. So, I don't know if that's a time of year. I found that it was more hinds that were doing it with yearlings, that they were, just fattening their condition back up. It didn't tend to be the stags that were doing it. Maybe they're a bit more cagey. They're just sitting back a bit and, waiting for their chance to go for another ride. But it's their habits are different. I was surprised to hear you say that the difference between Samba and fallow and the habitats between the two were not as dissimilar than I thought they'd be. I really thought they'd be polar opposites. But that's really interesting.
It's only more so. There's a couple of sort of high elevation areas where they're intertwining. When you start getting really high, it's only Samba that I know of. But there's a few spots that I hunted around 1400 where there are both on the plains. So, and it's generally more fallow deer, but yeah, occasionally there'll be Samba out there with them. But especially down in the lower fringe country areas, I'm noticing more and more fallow and Samba, sort of intertwining.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you would think, as Ian alluded to, they'd be, but I suppose it's because fallow is so adaptable.
Oh, heck yeah.
So that's what it is. They're just going, well, that's where the graze is, that's where I'm going, type thing, and it's away they go. They're an incredibly adaptable animal.
Yes, definitely.
And do you have an opinion on the minimum caliber for Samba? You're firing a reasonable size projectile there, but what do you think is a minimum?
The legal minimum is obviously the 270. So, I mean, I believe that you've got things like the 6.5 PRC and 6.5 Creedmoor and that, which I think would adequately take down a Samba, but that's not what the law states. So it is what it is, really. I really like. I used a 7mm Rem mag for years, and I've got the 300 PRC now, and I've shot them with 308s and 3006s and 300 Win mags. And in all honesty, a lot of people probably overcomplicate things with caliber. It really doesn't matter what caliber you use. I think your bullet choice and your point of aim are the two critical things. Bullet weight and speed and all that has an effect, but I think ultimately it's the bullet type at what speed and where you put it.
Okay, interesting. Where is your preference of shot placement? Are you trying to knock it through the spine, neck shots, or are you taking out the engine room? What's your preference?
My absolute favorite shot is high heart, low lung. Very similar to like a bow shot.
Yeah.
And when I first started sort of getting into hunting, I more opted for a higher shot, sort of up near the shoulder. The problem that I found with that shot, and quite a few mates have had this as well, if you hit any higher than that, you're in no man's land. And if you only get one shoulder, deer can run a long way on 3 legs.
Yeah.
And if you've only clipped top part of their lungs or anything like that, they can go a long, long way. Neck shots, I don't know whether you guys were aware, but the stag I shot, was it last weekend or the weekend before? I called him Big Brows. I shot him last year in the neck, and I literally watched him fall over, and he kicked a few times, and then he got up and ran away.
I've seen that before. There's a triangle on them where you're going through nothing but muscle, and it paralyzes them short term.
Yep.
And then people go up thinking that the thing is gone, and it literally gets up in front of them. You see others that see them come to life on the back of utes, things like that. Yeah, there's that paralysis spot that people quite often hit when they're neck shooting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that. High heart, low lung. I'm trying to picture the anatomy of a deer and how that even works.
Well, the lungs are sort of quite large, and there's a point where the heart sort of goes in there.
I'll have to do my research.
But yeah, I definitely like that shot, sort of lower down in the lungs.
Yeah.
It's generally around halfway up the deer.
Yeah, I was going to say where the darkness of the foreleg tends to have that shadow effect. Yeah.
Where the crease is.
Yeah, that's it. You're about there, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. If a deer's perfectly broadside, I'm pretty much straight up the front leg and halfway up.
And that's it.
Basically, like a bow shot. Where most people
like you're shooting it under, basically like you're shooting it under the arm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you want those lungs.
Yeah, that's it.
If they can go a fair way, like you say, on 3 legs, they can also go a fair way once you've punched their heart. So that doesn't kill them straight away.
Yeah.
The lungs certainly drop them pretty quick.
It's always good when you see bubbly blood. When you find your shot site and you see some bubbly blood, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I understand.
And typically, like they will run after that shot. They won't just do the poleaxe drop and die. But I actually get worried if I see a deer just drop on the spot, because in my mind it's still alive and it's just been in some way or form. There's a shock factor, and it's dropped, and I either need to get another shot in it straight away because it's going to get up and run off, or I need to get over there and sort of finish it off. Sometimes it's already done, but it's just in my head. Yeah, if I see a deer drop straight away, I don't automatically think it's finished. I generally worry that it needs a finisher.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming that shot, then when you hit them, they'll do that thing where they'll kind of crunch up and then they'll spring forward, and that's when you do that.
Sam will often do a jump.
Yeah, they'll kind of
you see that
themselves and bang for it. And that's whenever I know that I've done a good heart lung, you kind of get it's kind of like they boing, they do this, they crunch in on themselves. And then they straighten up.
Yeah,
you need to hurt. Shots, because I shot the last red I shot a hind, a few weeks ago. There was 3 of them, and it was really long grass, and I shot, and then I saw them running. I went, oh, okay, but then I realised it was only 2 running. I went, oh, okay. Something's happened here, and sure enough, it went straight down. It went straight down, but that's and the one I shot before that, when I got a little bit of video on, I actually got too close. I kind of got too impressed with my own stalking skills, and I got too close, and the angle was all wrong. I thought, I can't see the bastards; they're just there. So I had to peekaboo, boom, and bang. And shoot it at 40 meters. Was it scrub cut it at 40 meters, because literally the angle was all wrong. So
I think we've probably bled you dry of Samba tips. I've got a lot, so I'm super keen to have another crack at this as soon as COVID lets us. Although we're into October, November already, it's going to make it difficult. Might be an April, May stag backpacking trip. I'll have to go climb some mountains and get fit for it. But that's my goal. Just before we let you go, you've obviously spent a lot of time chasing Samba. You've got a pretty active YouTube channel, from what I can see. I assume you're on Instagram and those sorts of things as well.
Yep.
How do people find you?
My Instagram name's just @Tony Gillahan, and my YouTube's name's Tony Gillahan as well. So just
easy done.
There. But definitely very active. I'm pretty much out there every weekend, or I try to be. There's not many weekends I'm not in the bush.
That's great. And what is on the bucket list? Like, so many Samba hunts say, I don't care, I just want to go hunt Samba. I've got it and I'm not doing anything else. I hear that a lot. What do you want to do outside of the Samba world?
I've got to get a good buck for the wall, and I want to get a local buck for the wall, like a fellow buck. Yeah, I've sort of been hunting them for a long time, and I passed up quite a few when I was younger, hoping they'd get better, and then someone else had shot them and all those sort of things. So I was chasing a really good one earlier this year, but he just kept giving me the slip. So, but it's got to be a local one, because that'll mean the most to me. Like, I've been invited.
Isn't that incredible? You've been shut down, locked down, told to stay home, and you finally get out. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, walk of his
Victorians, I don't understand. They're different.
No, it's more so that it'll just mean more to me. Like, I've been invited to places where there's definitely better fallow deer, but it's just I want to get one close to home, just because that's where I've done all my chasing of them. And when I do get one that I'm like, I'm going to put him on the wall, it's going to like mean the world to me, sort of thing. So
I understand.
Other than that, I'm really keen to go back to New Zealand to chase tahr again. I absolutely love tahr hunting over there. So I'm very excited to go back there, hopefully next year.
Yeah. You haven't chased big reds or anything over there?
No, reds, I've never even hunted them, so I probably haven't got that experience yet. Maybe after I chase reds, I'll get addicted to them, but at this point it's just kind of Samba and tar.
Yeah, well, that first time I got, like I said, the first time I got honked by a Samba was one I'll never forget. The first time you're in a valley and you've got reds roaring all around you, something that you won't ever forget. I guarantee it. It's a very unique experience, and something you can do when you head to New Zealand. You can sort of pack both of those things into one trip. It's something we'll talk about in some detail on a podcast shortly. So stay tuned for that. We might be able to pass on some tips in the opposite direction.
Look, really appreciate you sharing. I reckon this is really the kind of thing that a lot of I'm one of them. A lot of guys are going to go, you know, that's what we've been after. We've been after someone who can give us some on the ground and about the differences, because when you see it on a video, you know, you're only processing what you're only seeing what the video, the guy who shot the video is showing you, and often, you know, you're only seeing parts of that anyway. So getting an understanding about how to be, you know, to take the steps to get down there, and when you do the big leap, how you can actually turn it into something worthwhile. It's like, and seeing an animal and putting yourself in a better position to get an animal. There's a lot of guys who are going to very much appreciate your time and sharing. So for those listening, they should bombard the hell out of your Facebook page and your YouTube channel, and because there's some great information on there.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And we'll be down there shortly, and East Gippsland is the direction we're going to head. We're going to carry on from our usual spot a little bit further down, and we'll let you know, and come share a campfire and a beer with us. We'll have a bit more of a yard there.
Definitely stop in for a beer.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Tony.
No worries. Thanks for having me.